Thank you. Agenda item 9 starts on page 49, the city access update. There is a public question from Councillor Oscar Gillespie.
Thank you, Chair and Board. I'm a Green Party councillor for the city centre. Some of the headline objectives for the GCP listed on the landing page are better, greener transport, strong and healthy communities and air quality. I'd really like to see these as well. These are needed in the city centre just as much as at the outer edges. But I am confused as to why the GCP has apparently not done much to research, to promote or to develop car clubs as part of the transport mix for Greater Cambridge. In particular, electric car clubs seem like a massive opportunity to improve air quality, reduce private car ownership, provide better access to electric vehicle technology, improve the street scene by taking private cars off the street, and accelerating electric vehicle charging infrastructure with help from the provider, as well as offering cheap occasional access. Car clubs can bring electric vehicles onto the second-hand market faster and cheaper because of the way they purchase it and dispose of fleet cars. We have a car club operator who have not done much to promote their business and the mode that they use, but in places like Norwich, Oxford and Exeter, car clubs are growing and electric car clubs are growing. I've seen a section on car clubs in the South Cambs transport strategy, so I know they have been discussed, I know they're on the radar, but I had hoped to see some mention of car clubs in the city access update or the big conversation report and consultation. One respondent mentioned them unprompted in response to question 8, what would be one thing that would improve travel in and around Greater Cambridge. But it's not surprising that respondents aren't mentioning them if you're not pitching them to the public and showcasing the places like Cambridge where they've succeeded, exploring the way that they could interact with other schemes. So perhaps you can help me to understand why car clubs haven't been brought up yet. This question has been taken as part of the context of question 9, the access study, and I note the option of an intelligent charging option. Everyone wants an unintelligent charging option, but I think the scope to integrate car clubs with intelligent charging so that if you're using a car club you get a discount, for example, or allowing car club users to travel in a bus lane as taxis are allowed to nudge people into using car clubs so that they're not just something that you walk past and see, but so that you think about using them. So some opportunities have been missed, but to finish on a positive, I'd like to invite you to come to a public exhibition being run by Transition Cambridge Clean Wheels, a group who are trying to promote electric vehicles on the 9th of April at the Central Library. And I'd like to ask you to commit to exploring electric car clubs and car clubs as part of the next stage of the access study, and consider why people want to continue using their cars as part of the modelling of different users. Why do they want autonomy? Do they want to be able to access sick relatives if they need to? Is there an occasional journey they need to make? And to look at ride sharing potentially as well, of bringing the price of using car clubs down so that it's more of an option for commuting.
Thank you. Ian, do you want to answer transport?
I was going to let Peter answer, but I've got a question actually. You mentioned the date. Is there a time?
It's from 12 o'clock until 2 o'clock in the Central Library. I'll be happy to pass details through the chair or the committee manager to all of you.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's the time I was thinking of. Peter, do you want to?
Thanks. I mean, essentially we work with a wide variety of stakeholders and partners to deliver stuff. We aim to complement them, not duplicate. I know that city colleagues and county colleagues are working on car clubs. We are plugged into that. We're particularly interested from the electric vehicle side And I'm sure you're aware we're working with city colleagues in terms of charge points over the next 3 or 4 weeks going in the city council. So we're interested in developments, and we think we will get involved when there's when city colleagues and county colleagues call upon us to do that. But yeah, recognising particularly electric vehicles do have a role to play in the wider city access agenda.
I think, Councillor Guthrie, what I'd add is we don't have a mission merely to reduce pollution. We're not that narrow. It has to be to help modal shift, to help economic growth, to help prosperity. So if one can link electric vehicles and car clubs to the wider stuff, then we're interested. If it's just for pollution only, I'm afraid you have to look elsewhere. You have to look at the county council or the city council. But if it's wider, then we're interested. It sounds like you would like to perhaps possibly sort of become the city champion for electric vehicles or car clubs or something like that. Now, we haven't really talked about this, and I'm now talking out of turn, but our smart work stream does allocate small pots of money to clever ideas. And if you want to approach our smart work stream with an idea or two, that we want specific cash funding, that we could seed fund something, put a proposal together, work up an idea, and the smart work stream, which at the moment I'm chairing, I won't chair forever, I think it would probably sit in smart, given it's electric, we can look at it. So if there's a specific idea you want us to look at, let us know.
Can I respond?
And Stephen.
Chair, I was just wondering whether it's worth referencing from a planning authority. Sorry, I'm Stephen Kelly. I'm the Joint Director for Planning in the city in South Cambridgeshire. We very much see the car club concept as being central to a lot of the discussions that we're having with developers around sustainable transport and travel plan choices. Certainly, by all means, engage with GCP. But to provide some reassurance that the Planning Authority and working with Smarter Cambridge and so on are actively pursuing the consideration of all of those types of transport solutions to just reduce the number of vehicles on the road. So it was really by way of assurance that it's certainly at the front of both I know the county colleagues' transport discussions, but me and my team's engagement with developers around.
Okay, thank you. And just for the benefit of other questioners, we do have, I'm afraid, slightly different rules with councillors who we do have a little bit more of a dialogue, whereas I'm very sorry, but for members of the public, it's just a straight question and answer. Thank you. So I think we now move on to the paper, the City Access paper, page 49. Peter, I don't know if you want to...
Just a few words, Chair, if I may. So the paper does a couple of things. One is a general update on some of the city access work streams. So linking that with the previous conversation, work on air quality in terms of charge points, and continuing to work with the bus companies on trying to introduce electric and hybrid electric vehicles in the city. And a general update on the signals work. So we've undertaken an audit of the signals, and that's now being completed. We now are in the process of making sense of that to say, what do we need to optimise, what do we need to connect, and where and what do we need to ensure we've got priority in our signal stock. So the next board will see a sort of work programme for how we see that rolling out, and linking to, for example, the sort of Trumpington Road. Can we deliver really quite short-term improvements? And are they a little bit less intrusive than big bits of tarmac? And then we're progressing the public realm, so working with Stephen and colleagues on the SBD, one movement in places, and making a little bit of progress on that. The substantive part of the paper is around demand management and what options are available to us, to you as policymakers. And the caveat comes at the start. It's not about making decisions now. What the paper is doing is to say, this is the piece of work that we're undertaking around really understanding the policy levers available to us to have a real impact in terms of demand management in the city centre and key hotspots around the city. At the start, we're looking at what public transport system is required to encourage people to move. And it's quite often people like me come in on suits and ties and say, we need good public transport. But actually, what is good public transport, and what would the impact of good public transport mean? So what is it in terms of frequencies? What is it in terms of reliability? What is it in terms of ticketing costs? What hours of operation do we need at park and ride sites? So getting under the skin of that and understanding that and saying to the board, this is what a public transport package of measures would look like. And it's service focused, it's not infrastructure focused. We need the infrastructure principally to gain the reliability, but this is the sort of public transport network we would need. And this, on the other side, the stick, is how we would encourage people to use it. So starting very much with physical measures, we closing roads on a temporary basis or indeed on a permanent basis. How we look at parking charges, parking availability, workplace parking levy, and what impact would that have? Workplace parking levy is an interesting one, because actually, when you sit back, it's probably not a demand management tool. It doesn't manage demand. It raises revenue, which can be reinvested in the alternatives. But so really understanding that, and then moving forward to sort of clear a charging basis around maybe toxicity or emissions charges. So the type of vehicles that we want to allow into our city that might impact on their quality, but we need to understand what really will be the impact in terms of congestion. And then finally, maybe some form of intelligent charging that says, based on the prevailing conditions of the network, we're going to charge people to enter or to use that network. So it's trying to understand the impacts of those policy levers in detail, so that we can say, if you did X and you did Y, or we probably did a bit of X and a bit of Y on a blended measure, this would be the impact. This is how it perhaps could be afforded, particularly in terms of delivering public transport improvements. These are the equality issues and the equality measures we need to address. Clearly around age, around low pay, around the sort of city, non-city resident issues. And so it's about bringing that together and saying, this is the information that the board may want to start to make future decisions, or indeed continue the conversation, the big conversation, with the sort of the public and key stakeholders about these are the sort of issues and sort of decisions we need to take going forward to have an impact in terms of managing demand in our city. I'll leave it there, Chair.
Thank you. What I'm encouraged by is that effectively you are linking it back to another big consultation, so that effectively you're saying it, although the decision might at some stage end up being the board's, what one's trying to do is engage with the public and make it a decision of the community, and the community comes to the view that this is the right thing to do.
And so taking forward the big consultation thus far, taking that a step forward with more information.
Yeah. And I think there were 10,000 responses to the previous big consultation, so it is big. That's what's been really good about it. Any questions of clarification for Peter on this? No. I'm just going to draw you out. It's my great bugbear is traffic lights, and I think there are three things you're doing looking at traffic lights. One is whether all the existing traffic lights, whether the time that they're red, green, amber, individually should be tweaked and improved so that traffic can flow through them. The second thing you're doing is whether there's a string of traffic lights down the road, seeing if they can be linked so that if you go through one, you then go through them all. And the third thing you're looking at is sort of radar sensors, so that some traffic lights, if a bus approaches it, it knows it's being approached by a bus and turns green in anticipation of a bus going through. So I've now understood there are three sorts, and if I'm right, Peter, you're looking at all three.
That's right, Chair. And I recognise that signals doesn't necessarily float everybody's boat, but to give an analogy of where I've just come from, when they put cycle superhighways in the centre of the City of London, it effectively took 15% of the road capacity out. The only way that could be managed was by spending tens of millions of pounds in traffic signals to manage the network, to ensure the flows were right, or an optimisation in terms of we're giving time to pedestrians and then time to traffic. and we give priority to buses. So actually, it can be quite an important tool in terms of the wider delivery of our agenda.
Brilliant, thank you. Should we move to the board? Yeah, Claire.
It's not a question of clarification. I'm just, as humans, we don't much like management and demand management either. So we're here to look to the greater good and try and find some way of taking things forward. Really, really important that these systems are very intelligent, as in very intelligent, not just kind of 2 clicks per day, and they're fair for everyone, both in the city and outside the city coming in. What I really want to see from this consultation is behaviour nudges to make the whole area easier to move around throughout the whole week, so Saturday mornings as well as Monday evenings and all the rest of it. So very intelligent and very fair. I think that's the key criteria for me.
So we'll keep going on the general board discussion. Bill, anything to add?
Well, I just want to say that I think this is hugely welcome for what we've been asking for, which is to paint the picture of how it all fits together to start that work off about limiting supply and demand in ways that people can see. It's not just about raising money, part of a bigger picture, and part of what we will need to do that might not make sense in isolation, but part of a bigger picture makes lots of sense. So it's about the integration and the coordination and setting out a direction that makes sense in the whole. So I think it's hugely welcome.
Okay. There is.
Well, we clearly need a big uplift in the quality of public transport because some of these measures won't work without that. But they do offer the prospect of funding, particularly a better spread of service, because we've got a lot of people coming in doing 12-hour shifts. And as Mr. Blake said, we've got to have a big focus on the quality. But we need to cut the number of cars, vehicles, and we still have the target of that 10 to 15% reduction on 2011 figures, even though we have had an increase, as was shown recently. So we have to persist with the discussion with the public and with other stakeholders about measures to cut the number of vehicles coming in, as Councillor Gillespie's raised, and as is already the case with initiatives including electric taxis and electric charging. We've got to move on each of the different categories: buses, taxis, commercial vehicles, and cars, to shift people from dirtier vehicles, dirtier engines, to cleaner options over time. So I think it's right that we have this stick, if you like, but we need to have the carrot as well. So we do need to just keep on these initiatives, and I think we need to develop this into a set of proposals for consultation. So it's good to see them all laid out in terms of the options. And also it's important that we continue to rethink about the city centre, because we still have too many vehicles finding their way through. And whilst the original document, which I seem to see over there, is not going to be the basis of it, there's still some need to just look at reconfiguring the city centre. At the moment we have all of the car park, say from the busiest car park, Grand Arcade, immediately routes most of the cars straight onto the main public transport and cycle route, and we just don't have the space. So I'm excited by the potential to have a town metro, but we clearly need to have both that major improvement in public transport, but also these more negative measures, but ones that could generate the income to ensure that that public transport runs for 15 hours a day and is more varied than the current offer. I'd like to see more small minibus stroke taxis in the city centre, subject to it not being overly congested, as well as the town metro. We need to have more variety. It isn't the case that everybody's just going from outside of the city into a single point. We need to have people being able to get around. Within this is the potential to fund the revenue costs of a much improved set of public transport options.
Great. So with that, should we move to a... Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
But I went back, as Lewis said, to 2016, and I turned to the page, okay, which had, I've crossed out one of them for those that remember the leaflet, okay. But I actually looked at what we were saying then. Better bus services, better park and ride, better pedestrians, better cycling, improved public space and air quality. I'll skip the next one. Workplace levy. On-street parking controls, including residence parking. Smart technology, travel planning. So my first question I put to myself was, what's missing that we said in 2016, which we're not saying now? And the one thing that did stand out was about travel planning. We all know that school times, when the schools are on holiday, and we know what that result of that is, which is less traffic on the road. So I do want to see travel planning put back into that mix, because I think it is an important part. If you look back to Park and Ride, in Trumpington, we've actually increased facilities there for schools to actually drop off children and get into smaller vehicles. Okay, so I see that as an integral part of the whole process. So I think it's about time we prioritise as well, because we won't be able to do all of that all at once. So I think we do need to start to consider with stakeholders, with other people and the communities about what's number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because we will not be able to do all those. Fully support of these signalling, because I think there is a lot of areas that can be improved just by including the signals. What effect would that have? When it comes to other things in respect to, and I've written down here, apologies almost to Lewis, the city centre car parks, okay, because that's an important part, okay, because people don't always want to go into the city centre, they're happy to park and ride, but if they have an opportunity to go into the centre and there is space in the car parks in the city centre, some people will not change their modal shift, they will go into the city centre and park. So I think there is an issue which needs to be addressed at some point, which is about city centre car parks. I'm not suggesting we all do this all at once, but we do need to take all this on board. Now, when it comes to some of the other issues in respect of the demand management, which is laid out on page 51, one of the issues I think that does need to be considered is about the traffic modelling, and it's not just the people inside our area of South Kensington City, but actually further afield, and that consultation with stakeholders has to be wider, much wider, because lots of people come from Kings Lynn and March and Chatteris and Royston and Saffron Walden. So I think actually when it comes to some of the issues as we go forward, we need to broaden out. It's not just for the people who are in Cambridge or South Cambs, but a much wider field. So I think when it comes to some of the modelling that is thing, and that's at 8.3, I'll turn over to where I wrote it. That needs to be extended quite dramatically, I think, into workplace parking, toxicity charging, road closures, etc. All that will impact on people coming in to work for the shops, etc. So I want to see a much broader. So my really issue is prioritisation, travel planning back in, and actually much more on the traffic modelling for people who work outside of the city and outside of the GCP area.
That's better.
Thank you.
I think we'll kindly take that on board. Thank you. So if we move to the recommendations, taking them in order to page 49, 2.1, there's a small typo, third line, reference paragraph 7.7 should be 8.7.
Yeah.
Would we be happy, sorry, Claire and Phil, if you hadn't voted, would you be happy on that one?
Yeah.
3 of us, happy. And the second one, which is about engaging with partners, particularly the Cambridge and Peterborough Combined Authority, and obviously the Mayor. Happy on that one?
Can I just make a when it says other partners, I think it's quite crucial that we engage there with Cambridge County Council and business and the university. We quite specifically put the Cambridge and Peterborough Combined Authority, but I think we need to be quite specific in who we are actually engaging with, Biomedical Centre and York's business. It doesn't need to change the recommendation, Mr Chairman, but I do think we need to make the point that it's a much broader base that we need to go on to.
Could we put that in the minutes where it's kind of, thank you. And then on the third one, sport principal of electric bus pilot and delegate approval of the pilot director of transport, state executive board chairman. Is this a money thing?
It's a money thing, but it will only be a small money thing unless it comes back here formally.
Just to give me what small mean, not exceeding.
I think if it was above tens of thousands.
Perfect.
If
Thank
it was
you.
above that, we would bring it back here, Chair.
Great. Happy, everybody?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. So we go to agenda item 10, which starts on page 67, and we have Keith Warburton's question.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the board. I'm a resident of Gamlingay. I'm here as a private individual. In my history, I've been involved in the telecommunications marketplace, the IT marketplace. Latterly, before retiring, I was the editor and publisher of the leading news publication for the video conferencing publication, for the video conferencing industry, which also includes telemedicine, hence the scope in question. I noticed that the largest element of the Greater Cambridge Partnership's funding strategy is about facilitating people travelling into Cambridge in as green a manner as possible, and of course that's to be lauded and superb. Also welcomed is the objective to harness smart technology to facilitate economic growth and quality of life. And it's that element that these questions cover. I would say that smart technology is not necessarily simply about bus signs and smart traffic lights. Many residents enjoy their workplaces at various locations in and around Cambridge. The well-recognised problem is of the travel in between, and that's what GCP seeks to address. But shouldn't the GCP be actively seeking ways to reduce our population's need to travel? Reducing the need for travel doesn't mean discouraging travel by way of cost or inconvenience, or as I've heard it termed, demand management. Too often, this is the easiest knee-jerk response. Rather, it means offering viable and acceptable alternatives to travel. Research has shown, quite conclusively, that contrary to the popular view that many people would like to be able to work from home, in reality most people would prefer to be able to work within a 10-minute walk or cycle ride from home, for obvious reasons. If this is what people would like, shouldn't the GCP be actively working towards it? So my first question is, would it not be attractive for the envisaged local travel hubs to become local travel and work hubs, providing meeting rooms with high-speed communications and conferencing facilities? Now, we should also recognise that through remote diagnostics and communications, many of our health and care services can be delivered to the user without the need for travel and without the need for any technological skills on the part of the user. A reduction in the number of journeys to our hospitals and GP surgeries is surely a worthwhile objective. GP practices are often struggling to be viable and or handle the workload. So my second question, why not facilitate local consultation rooms located in GP practices with state-of-the-art telemedicine systems linked to specialist consultants at centres of excellence? And finally, I sincerely hope the Greater Cambridge Partnership might officially adopt as one of its targets a reduction in the need for travel.
So thank you for the question. I think it's a very interesting one. I get to answer it largely because I'm chairman of the Smart Work Stream. Question one, local travel hubs. I have a tremendous sympathy with what you say about local travel hubs. I think there's two things I'd say. Firstly, we are absolutely keen to make these as bottom up as possible, that they're what the local community wants and are designed by the local community. So I don't think we would impose the concept of meeting rooms, etc., 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 on the local community. But we could definitely work with them and suggest to the local community, and there are 4 being done at the moment, aren't there? Foxton, Swavesey, Oakington and Whittlesford, that goes in. So we'll take that on board. I think it sort of links a little bit into planning. Stephen's over there. You know, there's a lot. I think a lot of people think that there's more scope in the villages for redundant farm buildings and small little employment centres. That's really a planning issue. You've got to get planning first before you put in the broadband and the cable and things like that. There's the broadband initiative going through the county council. On your other one about GP practices, I think that's very interesting. I think to certainly, I'm not ducking that one. A large part of that's going to come from the NHS in the first place. But concept, I have tremendous sympathy with. So thank you for your question.
Thank you.
I accept all the concept behind it. Looks like Ian.
Well, only to add, thank you, I warm to your suggestions, by the way, let's start with that. I think the idea, particularly the NHS GPs, I hope you're aware that public health is now within Cambridgeshire County Council, and therefore there is a group, we have a Director of Public Health who is jointly with Peterborough, and I wouldn't be surprised if it might be worth it if you could put down some greater thoughts, okay, and maybe communicate that to the Director of Public Health, who is Dr. Liz Roban, and if you could perhaps put that down, that might help in answer to question 2, really. Okay, please copy me in on that, because obviously, okay.
Just a small point, I think that Admiralty recognise that they've got to reverse the centralisation. So yes, they want to have the critical facilities there for children, for PAPA, but I think they're returning and for actually distributing a lot of the sort of fairly routine tests and some of that equipment. So I think we will see that, and that would definitely potentially link up with some of these locations. So I think you're right to focus on a bit like with waste, reduce, reuse, rather than just go into
Don't travel in the first
changes.
place.
So if we can do some of this, we will. And clearly, encourage employers to follow this pattern as well, assisted by the connectivity that the county and the combined authority are investing in, because if we're going to invest as we plan to over £10 million into full fibre and to connectivity in terms of 5G, then that will make a big difference.
Great, thank you.
May I,
okay, get to be brief. So if we move on to the agenda item number 10, page 67, Lee.
Hello. So I think most people will be familiar with the format, which the Chair might want to run through. Before he does, it might be just worth mentioning something which you probably won't have seen before, which is a bit more detail on the independent assessment panel, which is set out on appendix 2, page 85. Happy to take any questions on that. And the other thing is this paper asks for agreement to the next financial year's budget, not as the recommendation states the 2019-20 budget, but the 2018-19 is the next financial year.
I think in terms of that gateway review on page 85, we had suggested that our gateway review was delayed by a year to coincide with the combined authority, and the answer from the government was no, we'll stick to the first 5 years, so it's the original date.
So I think that open to continuing that conversation should we wish to continue it.
I'm not sure they are.
Yeah, I think that's the crucial bit.
Does anyone have any questions? So if we look at the recommendations, with the typo on recommendation going to 2, that it's not the year 1920 but the year 1819. Phil, if you had a...
You want any further questions on the budget from Sarah then, on the economics? Did you want to give us a brief introduction to the budget?
I'm terribly sorry, I didn't realise it was a double act. Yes,
No,
so
no,
which
no, no,
page, so which page are you starting at?
I'm starting on page 78.
78, yeah, sorry.
So this is a budget setting report for the next financial year, and it's got two purposes really. One, and it brings to your attention the increases in the overall scheme costs for the infrastructure budget and the operational investment budget across the whole of the schemes. And then it also identifies the detailed budget for next financial year, so it's total scheme and individuals and one-year budgets. On the infrastructure budgets, there's increases on cross-city cycling improvements from 8 million to 8.9. The A1307 corridor I just want to bring to your attention because in the report we're showing the scheme as 140 million, which is the top end of all the options. It is not the option which has been decided in any way. So it's just we had to pick a figure, so we chose the highest figure for presentation purposes. Chisholm Trail Cycle Links has increased from 8.4 to 9.3 million. Travel Hubs has gone up from 100 to 700k, and City Centre Access now reflects the 1.6 million, which is the 3-year costs of the removal of the park and ride charges. It's GCP contribution towards that.
I was actually going to ask in 3.4 Travel Hubs, you referenced Salisbury and Avington. Where are we paying for, I know they're slightly different, Foxton and Witherspoon?
I think I'll have to take that question away because I'm not sure where that's been budgeted to us.
Yeah, but we are doing them.
Yeah.
Yes, we
yeah.
are. Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you, take that away. Thank you.
On the operational investment budget, the main change relates to the evidence, economic assessment and modelling, where there's an increase, and there's a separate section on that in the report. And then in Appendix 1A, it then details the budgets for 2018-19, and you will then see monitoring against that in the normal progress report, which comes for every board. Finally, I just wanted to mention that there's a significant issue. There's a shortfall in funding across all these schemes, which ranges between 18 million and 111 million, depending on the A1 307 corridor options. The shortfall of this will be a first call on the next phase of the City Deal grant, and if there's any issues in the gateway review of getting all part of that, we'll then look for other funding streams or scale back schemes. But given so much of the expenditure is after the gateway review falls into the tail end of the profile, this mitigates the risk significantly. Thank you, Chair. That's what I was going to say.
Thank you. Do you want to talk about Appendix 3?
Can I just go to 2 points that Stephen may be able to help? Really, I'm on 5.3 about the new homes bonus. Is there any likely change on the new homes bonus? And the second one, actually, apologies, is directed to Sarah, which is about the 5.2, about Section 106 money. I'm a bit...
On the new homes bonus, I was just going to say that these figures are, it doesn't actually say so, sorry, the wording's been slightly changed. These are the updated figures, and there's a minor change in next year's allocation, but we don't know anything more about going forward.
We don't know any more at this stage.
No.
So what we're looking at is reasonable today.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Section 106, a bit concerning about what's coming in. If I'm looking at 5.2, that really is a question really for both Stephen and yourself, but mine, because you may have to take it away.
I think there's quite a long narrative that underpins what's the levels of confidence sitting behind Section 106 receipts over the time horizon that we're looking at, both in terms of completed schemes, but also in light of some of the lifting and pooling restrictions that are suggested in the consultation on SIL and SIT, I think it is, strategic infrastructure tariffs, which are also now being piloted. So it's probably a longer response. I mean, clearly the contribution that this type of investment makes is something that we'll have to keep under review against that backdrop.
Can I suggest maybe for next report, it might be a little bit more detail is required, please, on the future and the longer term, please.
We'll certainly see what
I understand what you said, Stephen. Okay, it's a bit of a change and it is a longer term, but I think a little bit more would be useful on the financial side of the Section 106 and delivery time and still and all the other things that come into that space.
I think on Section 106, Rachel, you keep briefed yourself by Chris Mannion.
Yeah, it's an ongoing discussion, we're
Yeah.
just working on bringing back an updated briefing.
Yeah, which is
Which we can share.
where I was coming from.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else that we want to talk about on gender rights and technical progress report?
Again, a general point, I think we're spending more because we're answering a lot of questions and therefore we're going into a lot of depth on all the things that we could have taken a surface quick
Yeah.
view on, but we're going into depth, so.
So if I take this to page 67 of the two resolutions, Claire and Phil, if you want to vote, we'll be happy with them. Thank you, three of us. Thank you. Thank you. Agenda item 11 is the future investment strategy. This takes us the rest of our pack, and it's really in two halves. It's page 95 to 113 is the report, and then 113 onwards is the summary of the big conversation. Rachel, what are you doing?
Yes, just briefly, Chair. So it follows on from the progress report and questions asked about the gateway review. As we prepare for the gateway review, I think it's as important that, as well as considering our current performance, we're able to set out a compelling vision about what we would use our investment for if we access the additional 400 million from the government. So the work that the board has been engaged in with Assembly members is to start to indicate the priorities for that investment should it be given to you. So this report is effectively setting out the work that's been taking place within the portfolio working groups led by members of the board with Assembly members, and brings forward the sort of long list that they are proposing as being considered for investment. At the same time, we are starting to consider how we would prioritise those different investment proposals, and some of that in early thinking is set out for you, but the work is being taken forward within the Economy and Environment working group at the same time. So this work has been very much underpinned by the big conversation, which has also been referred to during the course of this meeting. You now have a wealth of information coming forward, both qualitative and quantitative, about people's priorities, and we will obviously, use that. It has been used in the working groups, but it will continue to be used on an ongoing basis to inform your decision making. So we're really just wanting to air the themes that are coming forward from the working groups. We're wanting to recognise that we need to take into account the work of the combined authority in its setting out its long-term vision as well, and asking for your agreement that we now define more clearly what the criteria should be on which you make judgments about the future investment going forward.
Nothing to add.
Just one thing, I think it's on the recommendations on 95 actually. Let's actually give a sort of timetable. I understand what has been said in working with the environmental authorities, which I support, but I don't get a feeling as to when something might come back to ensure that we are, as it says, working and in collaboration. So I want perhaps some indication, not necessarily change the recommendation, but something that is recorded in the minutes when something will hopefully come back at least at a point in time.
So, Chair, our intention is to come back to the July meeting of the board with that prioritisation criteria, which should have taken into account by then the CA's long-term strategy. It's not in our gift, of course, as to when they publish that, but I understand they're considering a draft prospectus currently, so hopefully we would have that soon. And another key input, which is due to be published in May, is the first draft report of the Independent Economic Commission, which we would also see as a really important consideration in our debate too. So I think we will have enough to be able to come back to you with a more concrete proposal at your July meeting.
Thank you.
Bill. Thank you. I mean, I take it to support this. It's sort of what we used to call tranche 2 and tranche 3, but we don't call it that. But that is what it is. It's quite right that we join, as it were, the 2 5-year periods, to make it a 10-year period and really a 10+ period. But just in case people wonder what it is, that's what it is. I think what's really good about it is it's been done completely, praise you, Rachel, it's been done thoroughly, it's been done in a measured way, it's based on evidence, it's based on big conversation, it's absolutely been done in the right way, and that's what's crucial about it, so I'm very supportive of it. Peach and Claire, if you have Phil and Claire, Phil and Claire, if you had a vote, what would you say?
I'd be very supportive.
Yeah, very supportive.
Fine. I close the meeting at, I think, at 6:20.